lost. It was mostly oral argument on motions. They scratched the surface of jury selection on Monday. This was a jury selected in one of arguably the four most important criminal cases in American history. This is one of them, the first one, in a jurisdiction where it would be really difficult to pick jurors, at least everybody thought. They did it in 3 days, and they were finished before end of day on Friday because they even had more argument after the jurors were excused. This is amazing. And in fact, Donald Trump's team is already arguing that this was too fast. Rev, normally when you have jury selection, if you have 1 out of 100 jurors who says, hey, actually, I know the defendant and I have a strong feeling about him, normally that juror is out. Technically, you could keep them if they could be unbiased, but really counsel will say and judge will agree, you know, let's just be safe. Let him go home. We've got plenty of people who don't know the defendant. This is a situation where the baseline was not only everyone knew the defendant, but everybody had opinions about the defendant. So this is a totally different process. It was baked in. You had to find people who would self-select and admit or be honest that they could be fair and impartial or that they couldn't be.
Now, the judge has already excused 2 potential jurors. Do you think it will be difficult to keep jurors on the case, given all the public media attention these trials will continue to get, putting jurors at risk for potential harassment?
Absolutely. We already lost 2 jurors. We've already had juror attrition, which, by the way, Rev, that happens during trial for all kinds of reasons. Jurors break the rules. Sometimes I've had them fall asleep and get kicked off of my juries. But rarely do you have a situation where a juror gets selected and then the juror is out before the actual trial starts. Normally, that's nothing time. Normally, that happens actually the same day. But here you had a situation where a juror went home, at least one situation where a juror went home and said, boy, everybody's contacting me. They're pushing things to me on my phone. They're figuring out who I am.
And
I'm nervous.
This is a jury that's not exposed. People are not even supposed to know who the jury is, including the media.
They're not. But in the modern era, with the phone in hand, there are sleuths out there that can figure out who everybody is. I mean, there are 2 lawyers on the jury. All you need to do is get a general idea. You can search firm websites. We all have our profiles up there with pictures. It doesn't take too long. If you have enough time and Wi-Fi access, almost anybody can figure this stuff out. So I think, Rev, we really have a risk of losing more jurors. I think if the court could have it its way, it would have 30 alternate jurors, because I think there's a real chance we could burn through more before this is over.
Now, in the closing stages of yesterday's hearings, the judge firmly told Trump at one point to sit down. And on Tuesday, he reportedly raised his voice when admonishing Trump's attorneys about jury intimidation in the courtroom. Also, the New York Times reported that Trump may have dozed off at some point. His team claims he was just resting his eyes. How do you think Trump's courtroom behavior could affect the trial?
Reb, this is so frustrating for criminal defense attorneys like me, because criminal defense attorneys will tell their client, look, I'll handle everything at trial. I've read everything. I've memorized everything. I've prepared cross-examination. I have all the exhibits lined up. You, sir, just have to sit there and look not guilty. Take some notes.
And don't look asleep.
And don't fall asleep. And don't, because here's the thing, Rev. The jurors are watching every criminal defendant all the time. That's with a criminal defendant that you've never heard of. In this case, with the most infamous criminal defendant in American history, they're watching him the entire time. The lawyers will be lucky if they can get eye contact with the jurors, because they're going to be staring at Trump the entire time. And Trump, I really believe, I don't want to sound dramatic, but he could make or break his case by his misbehavior in the courtroom. And maybe what he doesn't realize is the same approach that has worked for him in the media doesn't work in court, because jurors don't like defendants who act out. And that's why attorneys like me beg our clients, just sit there, take notes. Don't tug at my sleeve. Don't roll your eyes. Don't shake your head. Some clients listen. Other clients don't. But I can tell you, most of trial work can feel like astrology. That, I think, is a tried and true rule, that a defendant who misbehaves in court will be punished by a jury.
But you do understand that good behavior to Donald Trump is misbehavior to the rest of the world. But let me ask you this. Two big hearings are ahead of Trump in New York on Monday. After this week's jury selection, the first opening statements will kick off in his hush money case. Trump lost another last-minute appeal to delay the trial, this time claiming jury selection was unfairly rushed. Also happening Monday, a separate hearing on the $175 million bond Trump posted to appeal his civil fraud judgment. New York's Attorney General Tish James is asking the judge to reject the bond, raising questions about the company behind it. Then on Tuesday, a gag order hearing in the hush money case where prosecutors are claiming Trump is in violation and was already on notice that violating the gag order could result in imprisonment. Walk me through what we can expect next week.
We're going to be busy. So as far as the bond goes, basically the Attorney General is saying that the bond that was posted, it's not reliable enough. It might not be a legitimate company or whatever the case may be. And when you lose in civil court, you have to post a bond for the privilege of appealing, because what could happen is you could spend all that money on appeal and not give it to the person who won it, which is the plaintiff.
So the legitimacy of the company is very important who put up the bond.
Absolutely. I mean, if I posted a bond and said it was just from, Bank of Bank, right, and made up a name, I mean, that's something that right, should be a concern. Going to the gag order violation, I think Justice Merchan made a good choice, and I don't know why he put it on off for a week, but here's my theory. It's twofold. Number one, he figured, well, look, I want to get to jury selection. I've got more than 100 people to go through in the next couple hours, so let's just push it off. And then he probably realized that by next week, and I think he was right, there might be more gag order violations, so let's just consolidate them and see what we have next week. So Trump's attorneys tried one last-ditch effort, arguing that jury selection went too fast. I understand the sentiment. I'm a criminal defense attorney, so take what I say with a grain of salt. I understand the concern, but that appeal has been unsuccessful. The trial is going to go forward, and next week we hear opening statements in the first ever criminal trial of a former president. Next week,
in American history,
next week is a week of many historic firsts. Right?
Now, a man died yesterday after setting himself on fire outside the courtroom where Trump's hush money